be moderating this panel with these amazing people who I admire like no one else can. I admire them for several reasons. Their passion for Miami is unprecedented. I think they are the epitome of Miami, in my opinion. And
oh boy.
I'm putting you on the spot. They represent not only Miami's past, but Miami's future. So we should have some really fun information to share with you guys today. Each of them and their firms have actually guided developers to make Miami the global city that it is today. So you have to really recognize each of them for what an amazing job they've done and how far we've come along in the last few years. Craig, you already saw his passion and his enthusiasm that is so contagious. Alicia Cervera, obviously one of my favorite power women. I think we could even refer to you as like the daughter of Miami, because you have that representation.
Yeah. That's because her mother is the mother of Miami.
That's
so it works.
So, and Daniel Guerra with Fortune International is not only our 2020 president-elect for the residential for Miami Realtors, but he's the quiet voice of reason that we should all be paying attention to. Ooh. So with that said, the first question for the three of you is, where are buyers coming from? Are there any emerging markets growing and increased interest that you're seeing?
Well, I just finished talking, so let's let Alicia, Danny take that.
So I have to tell you, I'm still getting a lot of buyers from South America. And what Craig said is absolutely correct. It's not that that the South American buyers don't want to buy in the numbers they used to want to buy, but a lot of them have been priced out. So if you introduce the right product, and you reference Nativo as the only product that's breaking ground, where we in fact have over 50% of the building reserved in 4.5 months, most of those buyers are coming from our South America because it's an affordable product, it's right in their wheelhouse, they can monetize it, and we're seeing great demand. When I go to the upper end of the product, like in a case of, for instance, the Aston Martin residences, where our average price is north of $2 million, between 2 and 3, then I'm seeing a wider diversification. I actually had one quarter when I sold to more Europeans than I did to Latin Americans. And the surprise there has been that I've seen an increase, actually, Swiss buyers, not an increase of Swiss buyers, just Swiss buyers, period, because it's not like we had that many Swiss buyers before. The Swiss love that product, and we're seeing a surprising number of Swiss, Italians, more Europeans, but I still have a very strong following from South America, and we find that, as Craig said, the Americans are not, running up to us to say, here, take 50% of my money, and yeah, I'm going to wait 3 years or 5 years, like you said, when we started selling this project, to have the product delivered. So in our pre-construction model in Miami, most of our buyers are still foreign, and again, I think that the financial pockets of wealth around the world are very good to explore as either existing feeder markets or new ones.
So I was talking to Daniel earlier, a couple of days ago actually, and it's just not, obviously we always see South America and Europe, but I'd love to see a little bit more granular, like where South America, Daniel?
So, following what Craig and Alicia said, we definitely have an influence from South America right now. We're seeing a lot of buyers from there, not as many as before, but obviously, as Craig had mentioned, because of the strength of the dollar. But early on in this year, in December, January, we had noticed that there was movement from Argentina at that time, which is typically not normal. That market starts to mobilize more around April. But seeing that, we said, this is really a sleeper. And we started putting some time into it, and it's actually one of the biggest tractions that we have today. The other thing that's affecting where buyers are coming from is, where in Miami are we? Miami, was once known as just this little place. Now it's so many sub-markets. It's very different if you're in Doral, if you're in Brickell, if you're in Coral Gables, if you're in downtown or Sunny Isles, and that's really affecting also where we're seeing buyers. To Craig's point, the Americans typically want to see something that's built, finished. It's a different mindset. They heavy leverage on their purchases. And in our finished products, we are seeing that, where we're getting a lot of people from New York even coming into the Gables. Some of them rent first, but they're all turning into buyers as well.
Are you seeing any increased interest from buyers in like tax burden states?
Well, I think everybody here will agree. By the way, there's one other, if I may. This is something that just popped up in the last 30 days for me. I've sold a couple of units, so it's the only reason I'm even mentioning it. But in March of this year, there was a lot of trouble in Hong Kong, as I'm sure many of you have read about. The millennials are protesting against mainland China. God bless this strain. Look what happened in the 60s, though. The college kids put an end to Vietnam. So who knows what may happen. But I'm getting interest from Hong Kong, from Miami. It's called flight capital because they're so concerned about the future of Hong Kong. It's still what Alicia, and Dan just said is so true. It's the bread and butter here is still South America, but it popped up and I wasn't looking for it. It kind of fell in my lap. But to answer your question, what I'm finding, what Dan's finding, I'm getting a lot of New Yorkers and New Jersey folks coming here and renting, not buying so fast. And it makes sense. They're renting until they figure out which neighborhood they want, I guess, or which building they want to live in. But yeah, we all talk about them as tax refugees, including the president, I guess. But yeah, we're definitely finding that.
So I'll say that they like to think of themselves as tax refugees. I personally think they just woke up and found out we're better. We got better weather.
I
We
like
have
her
nicer
answer.
people.
I
And
like
we
her
do
answer
business
so
much
much
more fluidly. And we're very open to the rest of the world. It's just a better place to live. Oh yeah, and your taxes are lower.
Yeah, hey, I'm from Jersey. I completely agree. You'll never get me back there again.
So obviously, because of my architecture background, I always like to talk about trends and finishes. Like, we know that design already was like so past tense, so 10 years ago, and now units are coming like fully finished, labels. We're seeing star architects. Do you see that trend continuing?
So you even have fully furnished being delivered as well. And I think what you're seeing, aside from finishes, is different types of product. So as we were talking about the scarcity of the inventory we have, we also have the inventory that's either the ultra luxury or the micro unit or the daily rental product. So whatever is being delivered is very different, and not every buyer is looking for all of those, right? So it's like, what's the best product for each individual buyer? And we really do have a buffet of options, not only locations because of the submarkets we talked about in Miami-Dade County, but the different type of product that's being delivered. Some are driving higher finishes, some are just being delivered more complete.
So you're telling me that the misconception of having just luxury units is wrong? We have a diversity.
It's such an overused word.
Right.
Okay.
I agree.
So that would make our audience definitely feel better, because they think Miami's only luxury, that's all we're building.
I always say that we in our firm have represented only luxury, but from entry level to the tippy top. So you can buy at Nativo entry level luxury, if you will, for under $400,000. So it's a very accessible product. But to address your question directly about the finishes, Danny's absolutely right. It's coming soup to nuts with everything from furniture to flooring finishes, etc. And I do think it's a trend that's going to continue. I think that people every day have somehow less time, and I think that as Miami has become a more and more sophisticated city, I think we've led in many ways with all of the amenity packages that we've offered, because the amenities in our buildings have been so rich for a long time. And when you talk about New York, for instance, I'd go up there and, we had 100 times more amenities than they would offer in their buildings.
Sure.
And so we led with amenities for a long time, and I think now we're following that and continuing in that leadership role with finishing out buildings and bringing in unbelievable brands and architects and designers, and every day more and more specific, very detailed attention is being paid to those finishes and really elevating the whole product inside and out.
So that actually answers the question. Can you be more specific on amenities? Because I was speaking to a couple of people from South America, and what we think as standard amenities is not so standard in South America. Can you describe what the buyer today is looking for with regards to amenities, what those are?
Look, I think the world is your oyster with amenities. So I'm going to do it the other way. So stuff that you might have thought was like essential, like a restaurant with Uber Eats and things like that, is not so essential anymore. But things that you physically have to go do yourself and no one else can do for you, like cook.
Yeah.
So no one can go to the gym for me, unfortunately. I'm trying to figure it out. So the gym needs to be close and on premises and beautiful and nice. And the same thing with the swimming pool, and the same thing with a place for the kids, and the same thing if I need to have a meeting. So all of those things that only I can do, I want them to be close, convenient, and accessible. And I think we're getting smarter about that. and how we integrate those into our building. And there can be all kinds of things. And as we get creative, a salon, so you can have your hairdresser come to you instead of driving across town. So the massage facilities, and they're being used more and more, the amenities. Because as it gets more complicated with traffic and congestion and moving around town and parking, et cetera, why not have the people that you're paying come to you instead of you have to go to them?
As the labor market also changes, you're seeing more work at home, and so I think we're bringing more amenities of facilitating that, like the conference rooms, the business centers, but more robust, more technology within the buildings for those people that are working at home. The millennials are driving that, and we're not just seeing it in our condo developments, we're seeing it in the multifamily as well. You're getting rid of certain what you called standard amenities and putting in more business type stuff for these millennials that are looking to stay home and work.
You can't stay quiet. Tell us, Brickell City Center, what amenities are we seeing there?
Well, probably the biggest amenity at Brickell City Center is the center itself. I tell the salespeople that work for me, the buyers will assume we have a swimming pool. Don't worry about the pool. Take them into the center, walk them past Saks Fifth Avenue and Chanel and Apple, and that's the amenity. That's the main thing. I just want to amplify one thing that Alicia said. First of all, I've been to South America a lot, as Dan and Alicia have. The high-rise new condos that are delivering in Miami are not too different from what you're building down there, particularly in Sao Paulo, and especially in terms of amenities. Dan said we're not building a lot of the amenities that we used to in the past. He's right, because they got it antiquated. You don't see cigar smoking rooms anymore, for example. That was probably stupid when we thought of it in the first place. But when it comes to the downtown and like Brickell, anytime you're getting closer to the water, as Alicia and Daniel know, the prices of the land have gone nuts. It's just nuts. So the only way you can build condos is you're going to have to go after the high-end market, the high-end, high net worth individual who's discovering Miami more and more and more as Miami's maturing more and more and more. It's a very different city now than when I moved here 30 years ago. The Perez Art Museum, Adrian Arts Center, Frost Science Museum, American Airlines Arena itself in downtown Miami are attractions for that, let alone the upgraded cuisine from the Design District in Wynwood. Yeah, no, you're going to be hearing more and more about these branded residences, which of course requires architects, but the Four Seasons and the Aston Martins and the Waldorf Astorias, you're going to be hearing more and more of that, because people with, I gotta say, it's the top, I guess, 2 or 3% of the world that are coming to Miami. And they want that kind of pampered living. They don't need amenities they're never going to use. It's the pampered living that they like.
So you'll hate my next question. It's a great segue, but it's something that we need to discuss.
I was on a roll till you showed
up. It's affordability. It continues to be an issue with most major cities. Miami obviously being one of them. How are developers impacting affordability?
I think Alicia should handle that one, because not only because she's selling a project in downtown Miami that nails that question.
Yeah.
So
Okay, I'm going to start by saying that the affordability issue should be solved primarily by transportation solutions, because not everybody needs to live in the most expensive, dense part of the city that has all of the amenities concentrated, but everybody needs access, and everybody needs easy access. So I think that the first solution to affordability is better transportation, so people can live not in micro units smushed in downtown, but in whatever lifestyle they want to, in whatever other neighborhood they want to, in a single family home, in a duplex, whatever it may be, and have easy, convenient access to the work centers and to a lot of the entertainment options that are offered in downtown. So that's the first solution. That having been said, I think that some developers are doing a very good job. The Mellows are a good example of that, in doing multifamily projects that are renting at very affordable prices. They're building them in downtown in great locations, and they've been very smart, because they're completely integrated and have a model in place that allows them to build at a rate, and they're not greedy. They come in, they fill their buildings up, and it's a very affordable model. On the condo side, one of the things that I love about Nativo is that I call it the Uber of condominium living, because you can move into your unit, use it when you want, move out when you want, rent the spare room, rent 2 rooms and live in one, rent the whole thing. So little known fact, when I was back in my 20s, just yesterday,
Yeah.
I lived in an apartment in a condominium long before Airbnb, and I was dating someone in London. And lo and behold, every now and then I wanted to go to London. So what would I do? I would un-Airbnb my apartment, put all my stuff in my guest bathroom, lock it up, breaking every condo rule in the city, and collect the rent. It would pay for my trip, it would pay for my apartment, and I would come back in a great mood and ready to work again. So I was an early adapter.
You're quite imaginative, aren't you?
She's not giving
By the way,
anyone
there's a
any
few people
ideas.
recording this.
Very forward thinking.
I was an early adapter. And so I
pretty
think
good.
that this is a model that makes things much more affordable. So I was just in Nashville, and in Nashville they've built a great building, and that building is a rental building, and what have they done? They have allowed the tenants to sublease their apartments. End result, waiting list to get in, commanding higher prices. What happens in Nashville? A music conference comes in. I'm now friends with my neighbors. I say, hey guys, why don't we borrow your guest bedroom, rent my apartment, and we split the proceeds? And people are doing this in a most intelligent way. And that's the option that the Uber of condominium living gives you. It allows you to monetize your property. And it's a creative way of using spaces differently. So I think this is part of the solution. And as everybody's looking at this home sharing, what they're calling now, it's kind of interesting to remember that the founders of Airbnb, it's called Airbed and Breakfast, were actually doing that. They were renting a room in their apartment to help pay for their apartment in San Francisco. So that's how it started.
And these innovative concepts are coming up in different areas. We're doing something called the two-key system in Doral, where your apartment has two entries, so you can split it in half and actually rent a larger side or the smaller side while you're still living in the space, or rent both sides.
And it's called what, Tuki?
It's called a two-key system. Yeah,
Oh.
it's
a great solution.
5350 Park, and you're in the highest hotel occupancy area of the county in Doral. So it's great for an investor, great for somebody who wants to take off to London. You know, it gives you these flexibilities. And that's what we call it, flexible living. There's some other innovative systems that are coming out that I'm not so sure how scalable it'll be. You know, the shared living concept and that sort of thing. We'll see how those pan out. But I do think that these flexible options that are being offered are definitely going to grow.
So actually that takes me to my next question. It's about trends that we're seeing throughout the United States, that we're seeing them start here in Miami, but not as much. I personally love the micro living concept, just because you get to a certain age and you realize you don't need a 4,000 square foot house, and you want to minimize and just make your life simpler. So it's between that micro housing, co-living, which we hit a little bit, shared living concepts, which are coming from the millennial group, where number one, they don't want to cook, they just want to Uber Eats, so they want to share a kitchen if they can. We're seeing those in the San Francisco area. Do you see any trends, anything that's happening that we should look forward?
Well, again, let me help out. Around the world, you're watching the return to urban living. I'm reading an article a couple of years ago in The Economist magazine about this beautiful mansion about 2 hours outside of Rome. And 10 years ago, it was on the market for, I forgot, but you'll get the concept, called $20 million. And 5 years ago, it was on the market for $10 million. And now they can't give the damn thing away, because the cost of maintaining these gigantic mansions is so huge. That's one problem. The other problem is nobody wants to be alone anymore. They want to come to the urban centers. I'm having a conversation with Alicia a couple of months ago about something, and she's, I think it was probably our podcast. And you said, and I'm selling Brickell City Center for Swire, it's Brickell Avenue, it's downtown, whatever. And she said, have you noticed a quiet migration from Miamians living in Miami Beach to the downtown core? I went, oh my God, like the nose on my face. Why didn't I, yeah. Yeah, they are. I am selling folks from South Beach, from Miami Beach, Sunny Isles, Aventura. They're moving to the downtown area because there's a there. And I think that's happening like literally all over the world, whether it's shopping, whether it's houses of worship, whether it's education, whether it's medical facilities, or just ridiculous dining and entertainment options, all within walking distance, because pedestrian-friendly neighborhoods are indeed more popular than anything that requires a car. It's partly why Uber, I guess, has gotten so popular, because we're really getting tired of driving, particularly in the crazy traffic that we have to deal with in, in any city that you're living in. So I will tell you, it's not just a Miami thing. It's around the world. People are millennials and baby boomers and everything in between. That would be Alicia and I, not Danny, he's still young. Are just rediscovering urban life. And so that's one mega trend that kind of started happening about 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago, unbeknownst to me. And I think you're just going to see more and more and more of it.
Yeah, I think people used to get married, at 18, 20, 25, pick a number, and now they're waiting. And I think that people are getting lonely, and that somehow you've realized that for as much as you hold your phone all day long, it's not hugging you back. And that need for human contact, I think, is, there's almost a reverse pendulum swing, where before we kind of wanted to run away and get away from the mobs, and now we're finding that there's this isolation. And the research on the millennials and even the younger generations is they don't have more than 1 or 2 friends in the world. It's a really interesting phenomenon.
They don't know anybody in London?
Yeah, imagine that, So I think this urban arrival, again, if you will, is creating more opportunity for this generation that grew up so attached to their devices to start interacting. And by the way, I think it's a phenomenal thing, because in the beginning, in the middle, and the end, human contact is everything.
And going to that urban infill and that opportunity, I think it's really interesting, tying this to the speaker earlier today about the opportunity zones, because these areas are going to really change our urban core. And a deal has to make sense first before you think of opportunity. So whether it's in the opportunity zone or outside of the opportunity zone, the deal's got to make sense to do it. But when you put it in an opportunity zone and it makes sense, that's icing on the cake, and that's going to create these areas that would not have developed before to develop a little bit faster. Some people are doing multifamily, some people are delivering office space, but there's also a business component to it, which just came out this year, and when they changed some of the, or defined, I should say, some of the rules in April, where you could actually build a business within an opportunity zone and then sell that business and take advantage of the tax benefits. So all of that is going to revolutionize certain areas of Miami that were not thought of as exciting, let's say, before.
It's really great that you guys are mentioning all this, because Danielle Blake, one of the things that we discuss in our meetings is there's a new trend for auxiliary structures in homes, and which cities are approving those, and it's like container homes being put as in-law quarters for people to share the properties.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen anything like this at all?
It's
or conversation?
super exciting that you're mentioning, because we really should start lobbying for that, because that was very commonplace, right? In Coral Gables and in Coconut Grove, the homes would have this auxiliary home, whatever it was, a guest quarters, an in-laws quarters, a maid's quarters, whatever it was. And it's really, zoning forced that out. It wasn't that people all of a sudden decided that they didn't want to have that. It's that zoning said, no, you can't have that. So I think it's a great solution, and I think that it's a great financial solution, but it's also a great enhancer to our social fiber to keep families together instead of splitting them apart.
This one's a loaded one, and I think you started touching on it. So Miami has rapidly emerged as a prominent global city due to its many attributes, obviously. Where do you see Miami and the local real estate market in 10 years and maybe 20 years?
Oh, dear God.
That's an easy one. Come on,
Craig.
Craig.
10 years?
Easy.
Oh, God. It reminds me of the company of Swire Properties that I'm working for, Brickell City Center. They actually write 15-year business plans. I said, how un-American of you. We barely get past 3 or 5 years, and then we hope like hell that we're right. Look, if the population trends, this is an easy one in a way. I mean, if the population trends continue, I see Miami real estate getting very, very expensive. I know that doesn't help those that are concerned about affordability, but it's going to get tighter and tighter and tighter. The high net worth individual has discovered Miami, and they want design. You give them top-notch design, finishes, architects, they'll buy. We're As I said earlier, this is the smallest big city in the world. There's less than 3 million people that live in greater Miami. When you can compare that to other cities in the world, this is a small place with a huge potential for growth. And that's the problem in terms of the affordability thing, is the price of land. Landowners don't care. The land just keeps appreciating in value and appreciating in value, driving developers into having to build these extraordinary buildings that have been met with some significant demand from people all over the world. Miami is a city, so we already talked about the return back to urban areas. It's a city surrounded by water. You know, 2/3 of the world population lives on the water. 2/3, not just here in the United States. I remember reading this when the United States hit 300 million people in 2006, and we're supposed to hit 400 million people by the year 2040. Where will everybody live? Well, the first answer was in the interior of the United States, because if you ever flew over the United States, you look out your airplane window, there's nothing but vacant land. Oh, easy. Well, wait a minute. 2/3 of the whole world lives on major bodies of water. Here in this country, it's the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific, the Gulf, and the Great Lakes. We always have. I suspect we always will. So for those that are thinking about the affordability answer, when it comes to waterfront property, either on the beach or the downtown core, next 10 years, I think it's going to be untouchable, particularly if just the organic growth maintains itself. God forbid we get South America back like we had it back in 2012, 13, and 14. It's going to become a really expensive place to live.
And it's all relative also, right? Because when you talk to a lot of people, they think, oh, Miami's expensive. But then talk to someone from Switzerland or someone from London or Hong Kong, and all of a sudden they're going, what did you say? What was that price? Yeah. They can't believe how inexpensive. Yeah, I mean, so it's very relative also. But I do think that when people tell me when's the best time to buy in Miami, I'm like yesterday. Because the city is definitely going to get more expensive unless, God forbid, something horrendous happens. That line, you're going to need an extension on your screen because it is going to keep going up and up. And I think the big difference is that it's going to be much more stable. So that those opportunities and big dips that we had, and I know that there's clients out there that are waiting for that big dip, get over it, it's not coming back. You may have a small scoop, but you're not going to have a big dip. It's not happening. The city is well too stabilized for that, and those opportunities are going to be, they're already gone in a big way. You know, every time I get one of these guys calling me the vulture funds and saying, I'll pick up anything that doesn't close. So will I.
Yeah,
you know?
Especially at the price they're willing to pay.
Yeah. Thank you very much. If you want to buy something in Miami for real money, call me. Goodbye. So those days are long gone, and I don't see them ever coming back.
Going back to your question, you know, where do we see the market in 10 or 15 years? I think that it's going to develop based on proximity, and you know what I mentioned earlier, how we're these little sub-markets throughout Dade County. We're already seeing it where before you would drive really far to go to Miami Beach or to go to Lincoln Road and to you know, go have dinner and go enjoy and go see people and these centers of where meeting points, call them. Well, now we're seeing those meeting points being developed in other areas. You know, you have the downtown Doral, which became a center for people to
100%.
have great restaurants, great services, be able to live, have excellent schools, all in one area. It's a 250-acre development. That's about 100 hectares, and it's a city within a city. But you've created a point for people to stay. Now you're seeing that happening in multiple areas. In the arts and entertainment district, you're getting a lot of infrastructure. There are a lot of restaurants. The added amenities to the buildings so that people don't need to move around so much. Because as you mentioned, with traffic, it becomes proximity, and you want to have things nearby. Much like Houston developed. Houston's enormous, but people don't really go very far from their homes. Everything happens around them, and I think that's what we're going to see developing. We'll always be leaders in setting trends and changing types of products that we're delivering, and you'll see innovations in that. So you'll you know, guess which one's going to happen next, and we don't have a crystal ball, but you'll definitely see Miami setting the trend for other markets as well in terms of coming up with new products, more architects. We have some of the best restaurants in the world are all now here. So Miami became an adult with us, and it's gonna continue growing in that way.
I love that analogy. Each one of you has been amazing at being media busters. You know, the media obviously bad news sells. A lot of our foreign national friends that are visiting here are reading overseas that Miami is going to be underwater in 10 years, and I hate to address the white elephant in the room, but we heard Mayor Suarez this morning talking about how much money they're spending on resiliency. What do you guys think about this whole media spiel about Miami being underwater in 10 years?
Can I, let me, if I may. I'm in New York City about 2 years ago, and I'm selling the residences at the W in Fort Lauderdale for Related New York. So Related, for those of you that aren't from the US, Related is a huge development brand both here in Miami and New York City. And I'm in New York. It's just coincidental that on the Sunday flight up, I'm reading the New York Times about global warming and the threat from rising sea levels. And anyway, I'm doing my presentation about the views and the finishes and the price per foot. What a deal. And some lady in the back says, "Hey, honey, aren't you worried about rising sea levels in Miami Beach?" And I said, well, this is really coincidental that you're asking this question, because just yesterday I was reading the New York Times about global warming and the threat of rising sea levels around this thing we call the planet Earth. The one city that is the most vulnerable to rising sea levels is Lower Manhattan. And number 2 is London, England. Tell your old boyfriend. Number 3 is Sydney, Australia. And number 4 is Singapore, followed by Miami. So, ma'am, in the back, yeah, I'm concerned. I mean, I'm a grandfather now. I have 3 grandchildren. I would like them, I live on the beach in Sunny Isles Beach. I would love for them to be able to enjoy that beach for a long, long time. It's not a concern that I have just about Miami. It's a concern I think that everyone should have about the planet, because these are not rising sea levels off the southeast coast of Florida. These are rising sea levels on the planet Earth. And I don't know, maybe Leanne, your generation, the millennials have geniuses already working on this. And by the way, I'm a huge fan of Mayor Suarez. What Phil Levine did, former mayor of Miami Beach, and Miami Beach was extraordinary. He spent $500 million to raise the streets and the sidewalks. It created horrific construction. We're addressing it as much as we can. At some point in time, however, you know, we're going to need a little more help than just raising sidewalks and raising street levels around the entire globe. So, Ines, all due respect, when I hear the threat of rising sea levels in Miami, this is always my answer, because it's not just about Florida, it's about the whole planet that we all occupy.
Yeah, and that should be the only problem we have to worry about. So, you know, when I get asked that on a panel by somebody, I say, it's an issue. You could move to Colorado. There's some great mountains there.
Yeah.
There's a whole middle of the country. I said, unfortunately, I don't have the answer. We're concerned, but for my money, I would rather be fighting that in the United States of America with the amazing resources, in a city that has amazing resources, with forward-thinking leaders that are addressing it and not hiding under a rock. But you got to pick what you're going to lose sleep over, and if you're going to lose sleep over sea rise, move to Colorado. Mm-hmm. You know, like I used to tell people that say, but I can see another building. I'm go move to the middle of the desert.
Yeah,
you know, if you want to be in a city, there's going to be other buildings. If you want to be by the water, there may be sea rise.
There was a journalist last year, which I will not mention, that came up with some crazy term called climate gentrification, and how Miami Beach, like the riches in Miami Beach, were buying in Overtown because of climate gentrification. And I just said, you need to talk to the experts to know that this is not the case.
I think he had investment property there
and
was trying to get people to go, because there's no way he could have been that misinformed. I was reading that going,
what she's saying is, Alicia Cervera is not that good a salesperson. There's no way. Dan? I mean, maybe this is a commercial for downtown Doral. What do you think?
No, you know what? One of the things I think we're seeing happen is you guys nailed it on the head. We have to be more worried about it and actually doing something about it. And a few developers are actually delivering sustainable homes already. I was talking to Ron Sheffield. He's around here somewhere, and he's going to have an open house later this week in a house in Pinecrest. There's one that just sold, not one of ours, but for $3 million in Doral. and it collects water. It has solar panels. It has special structures. It has special paint. The house basically develops enough electricity where it sells it back to FP&L. So sustainable is something that we can all work on.
Yeah.
If they prove they can sell a $3 million home in Doral, that's fully sustainable. I think we could do it in Coral Gables and in other places, and I think that's the trend that we need to go to. And to your point, our governments are worried and doing something about being forward thinking. And you know, if you can keep other areas of the world that are actually below sea level dry, I'm sure that we can work on Miami.
Beautiful. So I have one last question for you guys.
Is it easier than the last question?
Yes, it's all good. So obviously we have a lot of foreign professionals in the audience today. How can they connect with Miami members or developers to create referral business? So the question here in this Congress for years is, okay, we get to network with each other. Is there something we could do more of? Is there a magic formula? What do we need to do to connect and really create work and referrals for each other?
So with the three of us here, all of us representing developers, it's the easiest answer in the planet. I once said, and Teresa always loves it, so I'll say it again, the three of us work for you. Because when we're retailing buildings, 95, 96, 97% of all of our inventory is sold by co-brokers. I'm on a plane tomorrow morning to Mexico City. Am I looking for 1,000 buyers to talk to? No. I'm looking for the top 20 brokers in Mexico City that are selling Miami so they can talk to their top 1,000 buyers. So that's how we roll. And our commissions in Miami are extraordinary in most of our projects, but I can speak for my own. We're paying 6% co-operating broker commission. That's to you all. That has nothing to do with what we're making on this side. And it can be as easy as picking up a phone, registering a client, and making sure you keep control of him until you close. And we're happy to do that for you all day, every day. And between the three of us, we probably represent 80% of the inventory in Miami.
Probably.
You're in good hands, you know?
Fortune Cervera ISG. Alicia's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We represent over 20 projects right now, and in all different phases of construction. So whether you're looking for something for the mid 200s, or you're looking for something that's worth 10 million, or you want it to be built in 2 years, or you want it delivered today, we have stuff throughout Miami, throughout Brickell. So you know, between all of us, we're really a one-stop shop. But it's an opportunity for you to let us work for you. Our sales teams do everything. We do pay very large commissions, and we actually have resources in other countries as well. So if your client happens to be in Argentina or Colombia or Mexico, we have assets on the ground in those areas as well too, to help you complete the transaction.
But let me ask you a question, because I've had this question in the past. So let's assume Jose has a client from Panama and he wants to send him over. Does Jose send them directly to one of the developments that he likes? Or do you recommend, because each of you have a general real estate practice as well.
Right.
Do you recommend that Jose has a person, an actual member of Miami Realtors to work with that can take them to the different developments and show them the projects? It's two ways of working,
right.
But it's making sure that he's making the deal if his client ends up going to another development.
So it depends on how practical he is. So I've always said that part of something is better than all of nothing. So for my money, you send them to a Miami Realtor, because very few buyers are going to go look at one property.
Right.
They're going to shop around. And how many realtors do we have in Florida?
Over 50,000.
Yes.
Over 50,000. So your chances of losing that buyer, if they're not being held by the hands by a local agent that can service them at every stop, are 50,000 worse.
Yeah.
Over coffee at a gas station. I mean, you know, their new girlfriend, their ex-cousin, you know, you name it. So that is a much more secure way to do it. Now, if you have that buyer that you have sat with in your country that you know is ready to buy, and that maybe they've already signed a reservation or sent a letter of interest, it's a done deal, no need to give away your money. But make sure you have them in a full lockdown, and personally, I'd get on a plane, I'd come down with them.
Yeah. Exactly. No, Alicia said earlier, you know, you're our main client. I preach this all the time at ISG. As much as I love and respect the person who actually bought the condo, the repeat business comes from the realtor that keeps bringing the business. So we go, God, the three of us in very, very similar ways. We go out of our way to nurture the relationships that we have with the brokerage community in any way, shape, or form. The truth is it comes in lots of different ways. You used Jose as an example. Jose will sometimes contact our general real estate division, or sometimes he'll go directly to the project. And as Alicia just said, if Jose's done has a buyer, and I'm going to say Jose's done a pretty decent job of qualifying that buyer as to neighborhood in which building, then go right to the project. You don't need to split your commission with anybody. If you're a little fuzzy, if your client's fuzzy, then you might be better off starting with a competent general realtor to help at least narrow down the choices from the various neighborhoods. But make no mistake about it, the three people up in this room, there's nothing we won't do to nurture our relationship with you, educate you, teach you about what's really going on in Miami, about what's going on with different projects. We know the differences between, you know, all these different projects, the expensive ones, the not so expensive ones, the developers with top-notch reputations and others. We're kind of your clearinghouse.
Yeah, and with webinars and video conferencing, you can get so much information now. We can make a direct presentation to your client wherever in the world they are. And of course, we also have assets on ground. We fly our agents down who knows how many times a year all over the world. So there's lots of connectivity, and I think it's important to know that we're used to doing business this way. We don't, you know, we're not looking for a deal without a broker, quite the contrary. We're looking for a deal with you. We're looking for you to fall in love with our city, with our product, and with us, so that whenever you think Miami, you're coming right here, every time.
Beautiful. Is there anything you want to end with?
Come back often and buy some real estate before you leave.
Well, thank you so much to the three of you. As I said, I have great admiration for each one of you, and I look forward to seeing what you guys do in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Ernest. Thank you.